Welcome to the Confidence Through Health podcast. My name is Jerry Snyder. As a health, wellness, and sports performance coach, my goal each week is to bring you experts to help you take control of your health and build your self-confidence. Thanks for including me today on your journey to better health. I'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, All In Health and Wellness. If you're looking for a health coach, you're looking for a sports performance coach, you're looking for nutrition guidance, like for instance, a meal by meal plan that will help you understand how to eat. It will teach you how to eat, and it will give your body, your cells, the proper nutrition to feel great and be able to perform at your best, not just physically, but also emotionally and mentally. If you're looking for those things, you're looking for the key to improve your sports performance, both from a nutrition standpoint and an exercise physical standpoint and a mental standpoint as you approach your athletic event. All In Health and Wellness is able to help in these areas. Go to allinhealthandwellness.com and you'll find the contact information for how to get in touch with them and get started on the plan that will improve your life. Well, Melissa, I want to thank you for being a guest on the Confidence Through Health podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, like we were talking a little bit before we started recording, that the Lord intersected our paths on purpose.
Absolutely.
And I love when that happens because He brings people into my life and me into other people's lives where it's like we're supposed to impact somebody, right? I might not be impacting you, but I could be impacting somebody because they just needed to hear the message from another person, coming from in the same way with you. So I was like, I've got to have you on the podcast and just share, like, to let people know a little bit about who you are, what you do, like share people, like, why is it important to be healthy? Why is that message important for you to share with people?
That is an awesome question. So I'll just give you a little bit of background. First of all, I'm the wellness coordinator at our county health department. So that's what I do for a living. And I always say that my calling and my career are combined because I've always been an athlete. And when I really started putting the two and two together, the mental health and the physical health, was probably when I really started to get serious was after the birth of my son. And I just had all these mood swings. It was up and it was down. And I had been just kind of a recreational runner. And I was diagnosed with PMDD, which is premenstrual disorder, which means that my hormones are all out of whack,
Right.
and they went to prescribe me medication. And I've just always been a fan. If you need it, you need it. There are sometimes you do, but there's also sometimes where you can fix it.
Yeah.
With exercise, and I was kind of on the fence with my faith, and I knew how good it made me feel when I consistently read the Bible and I was following the Lord. And so I just started doing that more often, and I just started running more. And when I would feel anxiety come on, I would just go for a brisk 15-minute walk, and I made sure that I ran every single day. Did Bible study, ran, and between that and tweaking my diet and having a more healthy diet, I was able to manage my symptoms. And it's definitely been a roller coaster now because we're talking 26 years later,
Yeah.
and I suffer from anxiety from time to time, but I know how to treat it, and it's always worked for me between exercise, Bible study, and a good diet. And one thing I will tell you too is I guard my joy with everything that I have, and I think joy is it's a choice.
Right.
And so seeing the connection and working in the health field, it's just been a part of who I am. And I just feel like the Lord just doesn't want me to keep that to myself because
Right.
it's something, just like with salvation, it's something so good that, we want to share it with people and we want to help them and coach them along their health journey.
Right. Well, and you said something there that I think people need to make sure that they understand when they're trying to make changes, whether it's health-wise or it financial or whatever it is in life, that there are ups and downs,
Oh, absolutely.
right? There's times where you've got to tweak what you're doing. It's not just going to be like, oh, I changed this and that's the way it's going to be the rest of my life.
Oh yeah, and Jerry, just as well as I do, especially as you age. I don't train the same way I did in my 20s. I'm not
Right.
qualifying for Boston the way I did in my 30s.
Yep.
Life is different. And if you want to continue being healthy mentally, physically, and spiritually, as you age, you got to change it up a bit.
Right. And so, and that comes into experimenting with different, like, different routines, different things that are again, like holistic, right? It's not just like it's like, okay, well, if that stopped working, it doesn't mean I automatically have to be on medication the rest of my life.
Right. Right, and I'll give you an example of that too. When I was getting ready for Boston, it was going to be my first one in 2016. This is before I got into ultra running, and I still had speed.
Yeah.
But I was about 7 weeks out, and I came down with peroneal tendonitis.
Mm.
And to qualify for Boston, tickets were already bought. I already
Yep.
paid an entry fee. None of this is refundable.
Yep.
And I was like, Lord, I don't understand this because at the time I was in a running ministry. I was actually leading a running ministry, and I questioned the Lord. I'm like, how can I lead a running ministry if I can't even run? And now looking back as a more mature Christian, I see God's hand was in it, and He was
Right.
moving things into place. Well, long story short, I had a friend of mine. She was the wife to the German liaison here at Fort Leonard Wood, and she had taken first at the first half marathon that I ever directed. Someone told me to reach out to her and to somebody else. Between the two experts who also
Hmm.
who also were runners, I discovered aqua running. I had never done aqua running in my life, and quite honestly, Jerry, I was so prideful. It's something that I'm not going to get in the pool.
Right. Yep. Hmm.
My one podiatrist, retired podiatrist, she said, Melissa, you can in 6 weeks. Chances are that tendon is going to be healed, but you'll lose endurance. We know in 3 weeks you're going to lose endurance. So it's a catch 22.
Yeah.
My other friend is like, this is what we do in Europe. This is how we train. So for 6 weeks, I simulated all of my running in the pool.
Oh,
And this
wow.
was, of course, back before the day where, you could put in your cordless
Hmm.
headphones.
Hmm.
So here I was, I'm in the pool doing 3 and 4 hour sessions
Yeah.
in the pool. And I'm like, this is killing me. But,
Yeah.
I came out of there chiseled mentally and
Hmm.
physically. And
Hmm.
by God, and I looked at a wall for 3 and 4 hours and I did 7 days a week, 7 days.
Man.
I came out of there and I was like, oh my gosh, I took off my boot right before I stepped up to the start line at Boston,
Yeah.
qualified with a 3:38 and finished right under cutoff. Like I think it was a 5:43, but I don't think I've ever been happier in my life.
Yeah.
And when that was over, I just remember the feeling the Holy Spirit tell me, Melissa, that wasn't just for you. You
Hmm.
need to go get certified. And so I went and I became a running coach and I've been teaching it ever since.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, this aqua running has become a ministry because I've had so many, I've had people from the age of 8 on up to 88. I've
Yeah.
had, I've had soldiers who have had back surgeries, runners who have varying injuries. I've had
Hmm.
helped women come back from knee replacements, from hip replacements,
Oh, yeah.
and it's something I would have never discovered. I mean, aqua running, but it's
Yeah.
it's amazing, and I've discovered this whole workout because I spent so much time that I do more than just the normal aqua running. I put in hip rotations and all these different types of exercises. So
Yeah.
you but long story short, to go back to your question, as I've aged, this is what I've used. I
Yeah.
supplement 2 or 3 long runs a week. And so I'm not putting all that pounding on my body.
Hmm.
And by God's grace, I'm still able to run well.
Right. Well, and it's interesting because I'm coming up on 9 years ago that I tore my knee up. It was July of 2016 on a water skiing accident. I say accident, but I mean, I was trying to do a trick, trying to show off, and I fell and tore my PCL, um, like ruptured the PCL completely and almost completely tore the MCL.
Oh my.
I'd already signed up to run my first marathon, um, and it was 5 months to the day.
My.
And I was like, okay, so got in and saw, um, a surgeon, and he was like, I don't think you need surgery. Yeah, but you're not going to run till January, period. And like, so this December marathon, like you can just cross that off. Like it's not going to happen. And I was like, okay, well, that's not what God told me to do. So, um, I did drop it down. I moved into the half marathon. Um, the longest dis I was able to run for the first time in October after getting a second opinion. So I ran on the treadmill in October. And so, 3 months, just nothing but rehab, riding the bike and with a massive brace on, right? To keep the knee in place and everything. Longest run I did since the injury, but before the race was 8 miles. So I was like, okay, I can make it 8 miles. I can make it 13. Like, I got this. At the 8 mile mark, in the race, I remember my leg went completely numb.
Oh my gosh.
Like just like, and I was cruising along. I was like, I know, okay, not go out too hard, just cruise along. It's just average, nice little pace. And then I just started running just like, slow, and people started passing me and passing me, passing me. And this one guy passed me it was at about 11 and a half miles. And he had this hat that had like, he was bald like me, but he had this hat that had hair sticking out. And it was maroon, so it was very easy to tell. He took his hat off and he said, "My hat's off to you. Keep it up." And he put his hat back on as he passed me. Um, didn't think anything of it at the moment, right? At the finish line, he came up to find me
Wow.
and said, of course, obviously I'm easy to find because I've got this big brace on, right? And uh, he was like, "I've just got to ask you, what in the heck drove you to do that?" And I said, "Well, God told me to sign up for the race before I got hurt and explained everything." And he was like, "You have that kind of relationship with God?" And I was like, that it triggered. I was like, "Oh, that's the whole reason why God wanted me to run this race." Like,
Yeah.
it was to reach that person
Mhm.
and be able to share and say, yeah, if you believe and trust in what he tells you to do, he's going to take care of you,
Absolutely.
and so yeah, so having those moments where you don't have a clue and it's not necessarily your plan or your path or but it's like God, if you trust in what God's telling you, a year down the road, 2 years down the road, you're going to look back and go like, oh, I see now what you were doing.
Yeah, because sometimes it's not even about us. And we have to
Mhm.
understand that if we are, the Bible says we're ambassadors for Christ, as though Christ were making his plea through us to be reconciled back to God. And we don't know the best plan for a certain person, but we do
Mhm.
know that God, when we're willing and we say, use me,
Yeah.
you know, we're, we're a vessel to be used. And it's funny that you said that because at Boston in 16, it was so funny because when it was done, and I posted this story, and I just said, all glory to God. I finished under cutoff and that sort of thing. I had someone tell me, and it really, I have always remembered this, that Melissa, you had more of a profound effect on me by the way that you took your loss than
Mhm.
by the way you ever took your wins. Because up until that point, I was on the podium and I was, not quite as fast as you, but I was taking
Right.
some of the races, second and third places, first in the age group.
Yeah.
And, the thing is, Jerry, is that people will look at us, right? And it's so easy to follow Christ when you're on the podium and
Oh,
when you're
sure.
winning and your health is good and your
Mhm.
bank account's full. But what do you do when it's not?
Yeah.
And that's the times when people they want to look at us and then, they want to see, are you a true Christian? Do
Right.
you really follow God?
Yeah.
And so I look back on those times just like you, and that, and not to downplay it. That was a tough time for me. I
Oh,
mean, that
sure.
was the Lord was definitely He was humbling me, and
Mhm.
He was putting me right in the place where I needed to be. And but I am so thankful for it. You know how James tells us to consider it pure joy when you encounter trials of various kinds,
Yeah.
and it's testing of our faith will produces endurance. But sometimes the testing of our faith strengthens somebody else's
Right.
because they look at us and they see the way that we go through these trials.
Yeah. Well, I've never gotten my knee fixed, right? So it still does these funny things, like because there's nothing holding it in place.
Oh God,
Um,
but
and so I'll show that to people when they're like questioning their own ability and their own, like, oh, I don't think I can do that. I don't think I'm like, well, you know what I've done? Oh yeah, but you're different. I'm like, yeah, but look what I'm pushing myself through. Like God's telling me to push myself through this. Like I might have to have surgery at some point, sure. But typically when I show them what my knee does, almost like to the person, everybody's like, okay, I'll get up and do it. Like
yeah.
if you can do that through that, I can do what you're asking me to do. Like, in a lot of times it's that mental barrier that
Right.
we don't want to allow ourselves to be as good as we can be for some reason.
Well, and I think sometimes too that I think it comes back to trusting God, because
Mhm.
what it, we say, well, what if He doesn't show up? What if He doesn't?
Yeah.
Because there's sometimes just we can go back to the Bible and in so many different stories, like when they're at the Jericho, and here the waters
Hmm.
were rushing through, and we're told to cross the Jericho at the time when it's flooded. Sometimes God calls us to these radical missions.
Yeah.
I remember one time, it's been a couple of years ago, we were doing this. We do this one sole purpose project to provide a new pair of shoes to every child in our Title I school districts,
Hmm.
and so we do all of these different fundraisers. Well, I was scheduled to run at the 50 miles at the Katy Trail, but the morning before we were going to leave, we're going to do our first one sole purpose project. It had already been derailed by COVID. I mean, just everything
Hmm.
that could go against it, because we started it in 2020. What a great year
Yep.
to start.
Yep.
Anyway, by the grace of God, we found a distributor. There's a whole story to that. There's a
Hmm.
whole God story to that, but we were faithful. But I woke up that morning and I couldn't walk on my I think it was my left ankle. It was so sore. It came out of nowhere. And I was like, what in the world is going on? So here I am. I'm like, okay, I'm thinking, I'm no expert, but I see the
Hmm.
enemy's hand on this. I feel it's totally definitely is, this is spiritual warfare. So
Right.
I haul around, we get these shoes on these kids, and then we drive up to St. Louis. That whole night I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm still hurting. Wake up the next day and I'm like, this is weird. It still hurts.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? And just like you, I just felt the Lord say, go, just leave it
Hmm.
up to me. So I'm running these 50 miles, and I averaged it up, or I tried to remember. It was like 133,000 steps or whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Every step of that hurt,
Yeah.
every single one. But the point was, is I made it from mile 1 to mile 50, gave God the glory, and the next day, wouldn't you know, it felt fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you tell people that, and it just blows their mind. And then I invite them to experience the same radical relationship. I'm like, you know
Hmm.
what? I'm nobody special. I just
Yeah.
trust. That's,
Yeah.
you know, that's it.
Yep. Well, and sometimes that's what it is. It's just like I can't imagine this happening. I can't imagine that is the outcome. But it's a matter of just going like, okay, I'm going to trust you and say, you've told me to follow this plan. I'm going to do that. You told me this is my passion. I'm going to do that. And and it's going to happen. And a lot of times that's what happens when it comes to our health, is that we don't, we get caught up in, the Instagram stories or the this or that, or, the look of what it's supposed to be like, instead of looking at it going, okay, if I eat these things that God provided, then I should be okay, and he's going to take care of it. And it's probably not going to happen as quickly as all the people around you are saying that they're changing their lives,
Oh no,
because it's your journey.
yeah. When you do it right, yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely. But it comes back to trusting God in it too. And I think one of the fruits of the spirit that is so lost in our world that we are today, I think patience. I
Hmm.
think we have love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, and self-control. But patience is a very hard one, and we only learn it through affliction
Yeah.
and through waiting on the Lord. But with phones that are fast, microwaves, air
Hmm.
fryers, we have a hard time with patience. and
Yeah.
and that's why a lot of people want to skip over it and say, I do want to be well, but I don't want to put in the work to be well. I want to be well right now, so I want to take that shot, or I want to take,
Hmm.
just give me a couple pills, I'll be fine.
Right.
And in the short run, that seems like a great plan.
Hmm.
But as believers in Jesus Christ, first of all, Romans 12:1 tells us that we're a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to the Lord. And so we have to give him our first fruits. And then we're told that our bodies are a temple.
Yeah.
And so we have to trust God and his way. And the Bible clearly lays out, the way that we're supposed to get healthy, by the way that
Yep.
we're supposed to eat and exercise. And of
Yep.
course, it all comes back to Matthew 6:33: seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added.
Yep.
And as a running coach and a wellness coach, I just tell people, don't spend your money on any other book but the Bible. It's the best self-help book you can ever
Yeah.
find.
Oh
When you
yeah.
and when you seek his presence, he'll tell you what to eat. The Holy
Hmm.
Spirit will nudge you, because I've done it
Yep.
before. And they're like, put that down, Melissa. You do not want to eat. And I'm like, oh, sorry.
Yep. Yep. No, and it is so true that the wisdom is in there, and that, the other piece of it that I think people skip over is that God created our body in his image,
Absolutely.
right? And
Mhm.
it's an image that in the garden before the fall, like, I fully believe that was an immortal body,
Yes, I
right?
believe so.
And so if the cells know how to heal themselves, we have to give them the tools to do that. And but in the same time, not give them the stuff that gets in the way of them being able to do that. And some of the processed foods, some of the junk stuff that's out there that just is not helpful to ourselves. It doesn't know what to do with it. It gets, it stops the communication at the nerve endings. And there's so many, ways to distract your body from healing
Yes.
that when you allow yourself to go, okay, look, just be calm, just do the simple things that have been around for ages.
Mhm.
Eat normal food. And
Right.
like your body, it will, like you said, takes time and it's patience, but it will work.
Well, and I think we have to remember that anything that God has created that's good, the enemy has always tried to destroy or
Oh,
always
sure.
try, try to mimic. And he started in the garden,
Hmm.
with Eve, and he said, "Did God really say that?" And so we have this, if we take food at its basic source, and I always tell people in a nutshell, just try to eat things that look like they just came out of the ground.
Right. Hmm.
Just try to in their most natural form. But in the enemy's ploy, because the Bible tells us that Satan hates us. I mean,
Hmm.
especially children of God. He's
Hmm.
hated us since the beginning of time. He would love to
Yep.
take us out. And if he can poison the food system and take away natural sugars and put in high fructose corn syrup, if he
Hmm.
can take things that look ugly, and God gave us our eyesight, so if things don't look good, we know they're probably not good,
Right.
add a few chemicals to kind of brighten it up a little bit. I mean, you look at a
Hmm.
Cheeto, Cheetos are beautiful. I
Yeah.
mean, really, when you compare a Cheeto to a carrot, if you didn't know any better, and if you said pick, if beauty means it's nutritious, you're going to pick a Cheeto because
Right.
that's the enemy has been so good at just poisoning our food supply, and we bought into it hook, line, and sinker
Hmm.
because people are making money off of it,
Right.
and we're a generation addicted to sugar. We're addicted to fried foods. It's fast, it's easy, but it always leaves you with that craving of wanting more.
Hmm.
And especially
Yeah.
don't even get started on soda. I think soda is one of
Oh
the worst
gosh.
was ever created on the face of the earth.
Yeah. Well, and that's so true. And that's one of the things that I tell people when I'm trying to help them get away from the standard American diet and onto something that's healthier is that, okay, well, like try and learn your body's reaction to these foods, right?
Yeah,
When you eat something that you know is not nutritious, we all know it's not nutritious, right? Or you have a soda that you know is, oh, it's 0 calorie, but it's full of junk that's not helping your body. What do you feel like in 30 minutes, in an hour? Are you hungry again? If you are, that did nothing for you.
mm-mm.
Like, so other than cause problems, like it did nothing for you on a healthy standpoint. It did nothing for you from a fueling standpoint. And people ask me all the time as a runner and an athlete, they always ask me like, especially my athletes that I work with, like, okay, how do you eat? When you go to get, your lunch, what are you thinking about when you eat? And I'm like, I actually think about how is this fueling my body for the next 2 to 3 hours of what I need to get accomplished,
Yeah, I
right?
do that.
Like,
Mhm.
you
And
know,
I tell them I view fuel as food,
hmm
and or food as fuel. And if it's not good for the gas tank, I'm not going to put it in. And
hmm
so I will tell you that I had a lot of trauma in as I was growing up, and I was anorexic for a very long time, and kind of suffered back and forth. And I think that's one of the things. And I'm thankful that the Lord allowed me to go through that experience
hmm
because it allows me to view food as it can be bad and it can be good, and you have to have that healthy relationship. So
right.
one thing that it caused me to do many years ago is to get a right relationship, to put food exactly where it needs to be, and to look at it only as fuel, and to put in only what I need. And I get that same question about what to eat. And so we do this program at the health department. It's a program that I co-wrote with another wellness coach, and it's a 45-day program where we try to get and instill in people the importance of getting their life back on track. And it's got
Mhm.
45. You have to exercise for 45 days, and you have to eat well for 45 days. And you're not allowed to weigh yourself except at the end.
Mm.
beginning and the end. So you're not doing, we're celebrating these non-scale victories and we're looking at getting healthy for what it does.
Yeah.
But my point being is that I tell them, I always, push more of a Mediterranean type diet.
Hmm.
And I tell them, I say, listen, this is what I do. You can take it or leave it, but it's allowed me to get my hunger in check because I feel a lot of people eat mindlessly. They don't recognize
Hmm.
their cues when they're hungry. I'm like, eat the same thing for 30 days, same exact thing. Have an egg sandwich with farm fresh eggs in the morning and whole grain bread, and in the afternoon have a salad or tuna wrap, right? And
Hmm.
they're like, well, I don't understand where you're going with this. This is where I'm going with it. Okay, for the first 3 days, you're like, man, this is good. This is some good
Right.
stuff. By day 10, you're looking at that tuna wrap and you're like, I don't think I'm really hungry. So you're not going to eat it. By day 30, you've established a habit of looking at food strictly as fuel, and you're only going to eat it. And you've recognized your hunger, and you've also recognized when you're satisfied. And
Yeah.
so after 30 days, and then if you can do it 45 to 60, for the most part, you've gained and you're still fueling well
Hmm.
and have the added benefit. Easier to go to the grocery store because I
Yeah.
have 20 foods. That's all I buy.
Hmm.
20 different foods. They go together in different
Yep.
combinations. I just go to the store. It's easy. It goes in the fridge.
Yep.
And so it's kind of a win-win. And so people are always looking, say, I don't have time to meal prep. Sure you do.
Hmm.
You got lots of time to meal prep.
Right.
A couple pounds of chicken in your air fryer, have
Right.
5 basic things that you eat that chicken with, you're good to go.
Right. Well, and that's one of the things that I think is we overcomplicate life,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Especially at the food system standpoint and what we want to eat. And again, this is social media has helped explode this even to another level of, the food has to look fancy or it has to taste, exquisite or it has to, and so that's one of the things that people ask me. And I'm like, yeah, if you look, if you were to take our grocery bill and look at it like week after week after week, you're gonna be like, it's the same like 20 things. It's the same 30 things. Like, oh, hey, you added this in there that time. Yeah, but like, for the most part, given what's fresh in the season and what's not, like it's typically the exact same thing. And people ask me if I get bored with that, and I'm like, okay, I'm the same person that can run around the track 40 or 50 times in a
yeah,
circle in a day. And I'm like, I don't think I get bored very easily. So no, I don't get bored with the food. But like you said, it's if you teach yourself how to avoid those cravings by
yes.
eating the same thing over and over, then you can add a little seasoning here, a little seasoning there, and change the same foods to make them taste different and lose that boredom piece.
Yeah, and you can also, people don't have to be as strict as you and I are. I mean, I think
Sure.
we're kind of cut from a different cloth, but I think that if you allow yourself one cheat meal a week,
Mhm.
I see people do that all the time. It's a jump kick to
Yep.
the metabolism. Now, I'm
Yep.
not saying to go out and just get crazy, but if you want to have pizza once a week, go ahead and have pizza. You
Right.
know, but it's all, I think people fail to understand we're the sum of our whole diet
Mhm.
over a long period of time.
Right.
So I we gotta live, and God meant for us to enjoy this life. So
Mhm.
but you have to. And once again, I think it comes down to it's between you and the Holy Spirit.
Mhm.
What is God calling you to do? I know
Yeah.
what He's called me to do, and I don't compare myself with anybody anymore. My
Right.
job is to be obedient, say yes, Lord. Okay.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, it's funny. One of my athletes, Monday night actually asked me, uh, they were like, are you chasing, what are you chasing? What's your next goal? Are you still chasing a world record? And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm chasing a world record. Like, how close are you? I'm like, I'm not even close. Like in my age group, like an age group world record. I was like, I'm still not even close. And they're like, well, what do you, I'm like, I'm just going to outlive everybody.
I've said that
Like,
before. I've said that before. That is so
I'm like,
funny.
that's my goal. I'm like, how are you going to set a world record? I'm just going to outlive everybody. So nobody's older. And I'm like, okay, whether it's like the 105 age group or whatever it is, like I'm just gonna
Show
and
up.
and so to your point on like everybody's passion is and everybody's drive is different, everybody's goals are different. It's like I know friends of mine that when I've told them my goal is to live over 100, they're like, you're nuts. I would not want to live over 80, and I'm like, well, I mean, depending on how you treat your body to this point, I can see that. Like some people are, maybe you're at 45, 50 years old and they're like, I don't want to live anymore because my body's already in this bad a
Yeah,
shape.
yeah.
And I get that and I understand that. the point I want to make though is that you can make change no matter how old you are, and no
Oh
matter
yeah.
what position you're in physically, health related wise, there's always an opportunity to make change, and your body can heal from the damage you've done. Um, you know, is that healing in quality of life left, going to be compromised by what's been done? Well, probably, but you can always improve it. You can always have a stop point and start improving the other direction.
I love that you said that, Jerry, because, in my aqua running classes, I get all kinds of different people.
Mhm.
And one of the ladies that I had, and I was actually, we had a wellness conference in May, and I shared two of the stories that were specifically focused on sugar. So I was a speaker, and I was just doing hydration and nutrition one-on-one, and just was kind of giving a talk about how added sugars are put in, and you don't realize how
Mhm.
much you're drinking, how much sugar you're getting in your Starbucks or, in your
Right.
soda or whatever, or the hidden sugars and some other stuff. And two of the girls, one of them I had in my 45 to fit, and she went 45 days because that's one of the things that we say:
Hmm.
no added sugars in this diet. That's the one stipulation that I have. And however healthy you describe the other ones, or your definition.
Hmm.
So she went cold turkey for 45 days. And afterwards, she told me, she said, Melissa, that was tough. She goes, oh my gosh. She goes, I had cravings, I had headaches. I
Hmm.
couldn't believe it. She said after 15 days, now she's got arthritis. And she said in the morning before she went off sugar, she'd get up and she'd only be able to barely bend her fingers, right?
Oh
Because
wow.
it's
Yeah.
the inflammation that sugar causes. People
Hmm.
don't understand what it does to our body. But after 15 days, she said after about an hour, she could close. After 45 days, immediately upon waking, she could close her hands.
Oh wow.
That's huge. That's 45 days. And
Hmm.
then we had another girl, and she was in the pool because she had a full hip replacement. And she kind of did the same thing. And she had lost a lot of weight. She had lost like 80 pounds. But she told me, she goes, Melissa, I'm glad that I lost the weight. I feel good. It's great off my joints. But she said, I cannot tell you the mental clarity I have.
Hmm.
She I didn't know when I was on sugar. She said I was in such a mental fog.
Yeah.
And so she just said that her mind was clear, and that she thought better, and it had brought joy to her life. And these were just and both of these. So the one girl, she was 60 when she started,
Hmm.
and then Linda was 59.
Yeah.
And Linda took about 4 years to take off that 80 pounds. And then of course my other friend, the first one I talked about, she's kind of gone back and forth now. She tries to
Mhm.
stay on it, and but she but just the story that she told me was just so
Yeah.
eye-opening. People
Yeah.
don't realize that big Slurpee that they may
Hmm.
drink, and they're not even thinking about it.
Yeah.
That is just poisoning. One soda has more sugar than you need all day.
Right. Right. And one of the key things there is again going back to like the 45 days piece of it, in that like there was a little bit of movement in 15 days,
Yes.
right? But it took the whole 45 to get to where it was like, and I think that's something that you mentioned earlier in today's culture and the speed of that we want things. It's so hard to go, okay, I'm going to do this for this long.
Yes.
Right? And so you really do need a tribe or somebody around you to walk that journey with you because diff it can be done by yourself, but typically it's really hard to get started by yourself.
It is. And I feel it is very hard to go solo. And I don't think, it's just a biblical concept, because,
Mhm.
Jesus didn't even send the disciples out alone. He sent them in
Right.
pairs. And one thing, and you've probably noticed this too. So on Saturdays, we do a Saturday group run every Saturday.
Mhm.
And every time I finish, I also teach our Couch to 5K program. And I teach other things too. Anywhere from the 5K up to the 100. But
Mhm.
after the Couch to 5K program, I always invite our finishers to come and join us and
Mhm.
at our group runs. And those people who stick with running or stick with any type of fitness program are those people who either join us or they join another group.
Mhm.
And hands down, I don't if ever seen anybody continue good eating or exercise habits over the long run without a group. I don't
Yeah.
think I've ever seen it.
Yeah. Even when they've had success,
Yes, even when they've had
right?
success.
They've had success, they've noticed like, okay, yeah, I do feel different. I do feel better. I do have all these benefits now. But then continuing by themselves, it's unfortunately it's very difficult. But I think another thing that God created us that we in today's world we tend to forget is He created us for relationships,
Yes,
right? And that's one of the things that I've got two teenage kids, and I'm like that's one of the things that worries me the most about them is that everything is text, everything is and I'm like you have to have, and I know that we're doing a Zoom, but we're in different country, different states, and so it's like when you have the opportunity to be in person with somebody, be in person with them
absolutely.
because it changes the interaction, but it changes, your personal relationship. It changes your mental clarity. It changes so much about who we are, but then also making those moves to a healthier lifestyle and doing it with somebody, alongside that relationship piece. I think a lot of times it's missed, and that's why people fail.
Well, Proverbs 27:17 is one of my favorite ones. I talk about this one all the time, but it says, as iron sharpens iron, so a friend sharpens friend.
Mhm.
And, we bring, like you and I, this is a sharpening session
Mhm.
here. You're bringing your knowledge, I'm bringing my knowledge. We
Yep.
have a shared love of Christ, and we're bantering back and forth. I'm teaching you, you're teaching me, and we're opening up one another's eyes. And this is
Yep.
what you get. I teach a Bible study, and like I'll say, this is a verse I want you all to concentrate on. I'll come back. What did you get out of it? I have 9 different girls, and they all get something different. And
Right.
I learned 9 different things that I didn't know before.
Mhm.
And so it's just, you're right. It's such a biblical concept that we have so much to learn from young believers,
Mhm.
and believers are in the middle of their walk, mature believers. Everybody can learn from one another.
Yep. Um, and it's the more people you have in that, especially like from a health standpoint, right? Going back to, okay, eating the same thing is boring, right? Or in another question I get all the time is like, God, do you eat salads all the time? I mean, like, do you mix anything else in there? Like, and and I know people that are like, oh, have you tried this on your salad? Or have you tried, the salad at this restaurant or that, and then it's like, okay, when you've got that expanded group, it's like, okay, here's some other healthy recipes that I found,
Hmm.
right? And you're not all on your own, and you can go like, okay, I can try that. I can try this. Or for people that have allergies to stuff, to stuff, then so they're like, not just trying to eat healthy, but now I'm even more limited because of, whether it's a gluten allergy or something else, like, that can easily make it so frustrating that you just say, screw it, just I'm
Yes.
done with this.
Yeah, my husband recently, it's been over a year ago, got diagnosed with alpha gal. And
Mm,
we're seeing a ton of alpha gal at the health department because there's so many ticks.
yeah.
And if are you familiar with it, what it does?
No.
Well, it attacks. I don't know the exact verbiage, but it gives you this weird set of allergies, and people have it generally for about 2 years.
Mm,
And normally, everybody's a little bit different. But like my husband, he could not take any beef products, and I'm talking he couldn't do half and half of this coffee. He couldn't do milk. He couldn't.
wow.
I don't. He couldn't do. So there goes salad dressing. There goes
Hmm.
all these different things, and he couldn't do pork at all.
Hmm.
No dairy whatsoever, none.
Yeah.
And so he got on this group, and we get on different groups, and we talked to people,
Mhm.
and we shared recipes, and they shared recipes, and it made everybody's life easier. So
Yeah.
it just to show once again that, in this life, we talked about the ups and downs, nothing ever stays the same. And when we have groups of friends that come alongside us, we pick each other up through different
Hmm.
times in our lives.
Yeah. Well, I think that's another thing that like a lot of times we have something similar to that where it's like, okay, this is rare, nobody's ever heard of it, you know. No, people have heard of it, people have dealt with it. They're just not in your circle yet,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so it's like, okay, go find those people, right? Go and of course in today's world, it's so easy to Google things and find things and not get lost in the, oh my gosh, these are the dangers of things, but like, okay, who's dealt with this? Who can come alongside me and say, oh yeah, it's going to be a struggle for 6 weeks till you figure some things out, and then it's going to get easier. Those are the kinds of things that we need to hear early in the process, and and those are things like I was training somebody today for the first time. It was the first workout with him, but I knew him. I'd seen him running, and but it was the first time he finally said, "Okay, I think I need you as a coach." And he was a little shocked when I said, "Okay, we all know the pain's going to come. Like the pain's coming. And he was like, wait, you're not going to help me avoid the pain? And I was like, no, no, no. The
And
pain's coming. You can't avoid the pain. You have to deal with the pain. And he was like, oh, like light bulb went off. Like I've been trying to avoid the pain. I'm like, yeah, that's why you're slowing down because the pain happens and then you back off instead of being prepared to deal with the pain, you know? And I think that's one of the things that like when we prepare ourselves to deal with whatever's coming and, you know, especially when we miss the boat on our health journey and we find out that, oh, we have this or that, we have to change our diet because of something that's come up. And it's like, it's easy to sometimes just go, oh, well, I mean, it's not going to be that bad. I'll just go ahead and keep eating this way and sacrifice our potential future.
yeah. I love that you said that about the pain because I think you and I understand this, as being coaches. And if you've ever been to a coach who has sugar coated it,
Hmm.
when you come to the pain and you're not ready for it, you're like, I'm going to wring that guy's neck, or
Yep.
she's going to get it. Next time I see her, she's going to get it. But if you tell people, like I've had people come to me and say, "Hey, Melissa, I want to train for a marathon," and I'm like, "Okay, you need to go sign up for it." They're like, well, I don't know if I'm right at that point. And I said, well, I'm not going to train you if you're not going to sign up. And
Yeah.
they're like, why? I said, because your mind is wishy washy. If your heart isn't in it and you don't have skin in the game, at
Hmm.
the first sign of pain, you're going to back out. Or the
Yep.
first sign, it is 96 degrees with a humidity level of 74. I'm not going to go out there. But
Yeah.
that's the deal. If we warn them up ahead and we tell them, listen, to get from point A to point B, this is what it's going to take. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's going to be hard.
Hmm.
It's going to hurt. But guess what? In the end, it's going to be worth it. And when I tell people, like at the 45-day program, I'm like, listen, in 45 days, you're going to be 45 days older, whether you do this program or not. It doesn't bother me. You're not feeling. I've
I
been
love
called,
that.
I've been rejected a lot.
Yeah.
I care for you so much. In 45 days, I want to see you change and I want to see you different. And I think when we come at it like that and we just lay it down and say, is it going to hurt? Yeah, because it does.
Oh
Running
yeah.
hurts. It
Oh
hurts.
yeah.
And you want to get better, you want to grow, you get and people are like, just like you said, when you have pain, people want to back off. When you have pain, that's when it's time to get into active recovery. That's when
Right.
it's time to get in there and foam roll. That's when it's time to get into the pool. That's when it's time to amp it up a little bit
Yep.
and start figuring out where are my imbalances? Where do I need to strengthen? Do I need to get into the gym? What do I,
Yep.
and then, but people want to back off and thinking, okay, if I just quit, the pain goes away. Well, yeah, it'll go away, but you haven't fixed anything.
Right. Yeah. And you've ultimately become weaker,
Yes, you become
the
weak
next time you come up against it.
mentally and physically.
Mhm. And that's one of the best things that my high school coach ever told me. And he's like beyond like good as far as like multiple Hall of Fames, like just super well respected in the world of running. And I'll never forget one of the things he said was, just unless you're absolutely hurt, like injured hurt,
Hmm.
do not stop in a race because as soon as you stop the first time, you're going to allow yourself to stop again in the future. So I don't care how slow you go, but don't stop unless you're hurt,
Oh my gosh, that is
you know?
so.
And it's funny because it came full circle in that, like I never did that. But then when I first started coaching, I volunteer coached at a local private school. And there was one kid that was really good and he was like, I need a coach. And I was like, okay, I'll come coach your cross country team if you get five guys. Like I want a team. I just don't want one runner. Like I want a team. And so he got some other guys to come out. And of course, none of them had trained whatsoever until like the 2 weeks before, at the beginning of the school year, we go to the first meet. And of course, we're in Waco, Texas. It's, 100 degrees, 100% humidity. Like, and we were running right on the river. So it was like horrible, like conditions. And three of the guys started walking. And I was just thinking to myself, what am I doing? What did I get myself into? How am I gonna like that commitment level is so foreign to me, as an individual,
Yeah.
but it taught me so much about being a coach and how to help people because, my coach, when he told me that, he had been coaching for 30 years already. right? So he'd already gone through all these things, and it was my beginning. And I was like, okay, you can't treat everybody like the elite person. You can't treat everybody like you were saying, we're cut from a different cloth.
Yes.
Not everybody's this way, but finding what helps people, I think is and that's part of what I love about the Bible, and that like you said, you had nine girls and nine different answers and responses
Mhm.
from that verse, right? And and we can do that ourselves. 9 different years, we can read the same verse and get nine different things from it over each of those years based on where we are in the process.
Exactly.
And I think getting that piece and understanding that, like, okay, meeting somebody where they're at and helping them move forward is what makes a coach a great coach. And not whether they continue on, not whether they have massive success, like compared to other people, massive success compared to themselves. Can they
That's right.
push themselves past a point they didn't think they could get?
I love that you said that because one of the things I always tell the people that I train, comparison is the thief of joy.
Hmm.
And so as a coach, I want to help you be the best that you can be. But you have to figure that out. And if you're always looking around and comparing yourself with somebody else, you're
Hmm.
never going to get to that point because you're always going to be raising the bar. Well, if God has placed the bar here for you, because you know as well as me, Jerry, God gives us each different abilities.
Hmm.
Some people are just born fast. I mean, that's
Sure.
just the way they are. They're
Yep.
born fast. Some
Yep.
people are born and they can get faster, but everybody's got that peak potential. So only we can find out where it's at. And
Yep.
when it comes to nutrition and it comes to our health, we're at the end of the day, we're responsible to be the healthiest that we can be, to be
Hmm.
on the team of God.
Yep.
And so this is what I tell the people out there, and I hope this will hit on someone that's out there going, well, Melissa, I am so slow. I am a Christian. I understand what you're saying, but I don't not quite sure if I want to get out there. Well, first of all, everywhere we go, it's a missions field. First and
Hmm.
foremost, Jerry, we're runners, but
Yep.
we're Christians who happen to be runners. We're
Yep.
not runners who happen to be Christians. Our
Hmm.
identity is in Christ. And so our missions field is everywhere we go. And if you look at marathons, you've got the business in the front and the party in the back. I always say they're
Yep.
like a race is like a mullet. You're all
Yep.
business. But you know what? If we're going to witness to people along that whole trail, because there's
Hmm.
lost people
Oh
along that
yeah.
whole, God's going to put us each at different intersections. And just like, there's people that I just can't reach. And
Hmm.
there's other people who have been through a struggle, who may have been and had lost a huge amount of weight. They're going to reach the people that I can't. God puts all of us in different positions at different times with different abilities to serve him. So
Yeah.
I think that the takeaway from it is always just to do what you can to take your body to be a temple,
Hmm.
to honor God with our bodies, and to say, Lord, I you've given me this tent that I'm in, and I'm going to make it the best that I can, and I'm going to
Right.
give you the glory. And then we inspire other people along the way, no matter how old we are,
Right. Right.
because we don't have any regrets at the end of the day. We're not
Yeah.
going to live forever. Life is
Right.
but a vapor. We're here today and gone tomorrow.
Right. Well, and with all the different things that could happen, and I've told people this before because they're like when they ask me about how long I want to live and da da da, I was like, but I could also be hit by a bus tomorrow. Like,
Yeah, or I will share this with you. This is fresh and it's pretty raw. A friend of mine, Johanna Austin, she is just when I say she's beautiful inside and out. She plays the violin at her church. She
Mhm.
sings. She plays the piano. She's got four beautiful little girls. She's got a husband who loves her dearly. She just, we had two 5Ks in a row with the health department, and she ran them both with her kids. Yesterday, she had a headache that would not go away.
Mhm.
She was rushed to the emergency room. She's been diagnosed with a brain tumor.
Oh my gosh.
As of today, it's so large that her vision is blurred, and she's
Mhm.
having some other stuff, and they're not sure what type it is. But that's how quickly life can change.
Oh yeah.
So for that person who's saying, you know what, I'll get healthy tomorrow, or I'll do it the next day,
Mhm.
you're not guaranteed tomorrow. We're not
Right.
even guaranteed the next hour.
Yep. Yep.
And that just breaks my heart. And so anyway, we're praying for her, but it
Yeah.
just, the brevity of life. She appeared to be
Mhm.
in tip top shape. She was in her 30s, and
Yeah.
just like that.
Yeah. Well, and it's so true in that, and I tell people that especially my sprinters. I'm like, take the race one step at a time,
Yeah.
right? All you can control, like it, especially when you're looking at a 400-meter sprint, and a lot of times they want to focus on like, okay, this is how I want to finish the race. And I'm like, you can't finish the race until you start the race, until you run the second 100 meters of the race. Like, what are you going to do then? Like, how are you going to set yourself up to finish well? And it's step by step. And I take that and I'm like, but that's life in general. Like, and I talk to especially my people that are in their 40s and early 50s, and they're like, okay, I want to change my life around. I'm getting, doctors telling me I've got to do this, I got to lose a little weight, I got to do that. I'm like, okay, but it's not just for right now. We're setting ourselves up for after retirement,
Yeah.
right? Like, because and I did this when I wrote my book back in 2019. I was like, I did this little stat, and I was like, okay, if all you're doing is working to retire, and they're moving retirement age to 67, the average person's lifespan is like 74, 75, 76, depending on where you are. But on average, spend 2 years in a nursing home. On average, you spend a year at home, like, doctor's visits, not really doing a whole lot before the nursing home. Like, the retirement, like, ability to enjoy life is being squished
Yeah.
because we're not taking care of ourselves when we're in this frantic 30s, 40s, 50s, work, 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 try and save money to get ready to be able to enjoy retirement when retirement goes away, because we're not taking care of our body
Yeah.
because we're so focused on everything else that's going on. And so if we peel it back and go like step by step, and the most important step is your physical body and what's going on, because God has something for you. And if you don't take care of yourself and you can't be around for it in 10 years or 15 years or 20 years, whenever he says, this is what I want you to
Yeah.
impact,
Yeah.
then I mean, shame on you, you know?
Well, and I think we have to remember that as ambassadors for Christ, we never retire. That
Right,
is not an option for us. What we do is when we retire from our day jobs, then we start serving Christ full time.
right.
And the better, the healthier we are, the more the better we can serve. I mean, I want to be like Caleb, who at the age of 80 said, you know what, I'm going
Hmm.
to take this hill. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't want to look back and have any regrets. And I think, we think about Moses. He wisely said, teach us to number our days that we might gain a heart of wisdom. Now, that doesn't mean that God will tell us the amount of days that we have, but
Right.
he'll make us realize the brevity of it. And a heart of wisdom says that this is the only body I've got. And I may be here one day or I may be here
Hmm.
100 years. And
Yeah.
because of that, I need to take care of what I've got. It's just
Right.
like, if you have a piece of gold and you want it to pay dividends for your retirement, you're going to take really good care of that and you're going to put it somewhere where it's safe.
Yeah.
Well, our health is something that can't be bought
Right.
at all. Even if that gold in 60 years accrues to be the value of 70 other pieces, and
Hmm.
you've let your health go to waste, you can give all the gold you've gotten and it will get you nothing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
we have to remember which one's important. And I think a lot of people forget, here we focused a lot on the physical part and the emotional part,
Hmm.
but first and foremost, it's that spiritual part. It's getting
Hmm.
yourself right with the Lord and
Yep.
and recognizing what he's called us to do, because as well as me, our minds are a mess.
Oh
And
yeah.
the psalmist said that I have set my heart on keeping your decrees until the very end. And it's like the psalmist knew that in our minds, we talked about this before, we're not going to follow through with anything because our minds like comfort and our
Oh
minds don't
yeah.
want truth. But if our heart's in it and if our hearts recognizes it for what the importance that it is, we're going to follow through to the very end because our hearts drive us so much differently than our minds do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And
and
I yeah.
but that spiritual connection is really, when you peel it back, it's like that is where it starts, right? And it's waking up and saying, the first thing out of your mind is, okay, God, use me today somehow, right? Like that's looking at it going, okay, if that's truly my connection with God, and like, okay, I want to be a vessel for him, then it to me, and for me, like, and I only speak for me, but for me, it makes it a whole lot easier to do the things that I do to take care of myself.
Yes.
when I say make me a vessel, because I know when I go to the grocery store, because I get asked almost every time I'm in the grocery store, like, oh my gosh, like what, like they look at my basket and like something about like, oh my God, I get asked how old I am. I get asked like what I eat to stay in such good shape. And and it's just like, I know that that's an opening for me to be also to share like, okay, because obviously the next question, once I tell them something like, and answer one of those questions is like, why do you do that? Like, okay, well, this is the purpose and passion that God has given me. Like, and so I'm just living out what he's told me. And 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 so sometimes that continues the conversation. Sometimes it's, okay. And I'm like, hey, that's God's dealing at that point, right?
Yeah, you planted a seed.
Right. And but it's that ability to be able to say, I'm approachable because I've said, God, use me,
Yeah.
And so if somebody wants to approach me, I'm like, I'm all for it. And which is crazy because I think if you asked anybody from my elementary, high school, college days, they're gonna be like, you're the most introverted person I've ever seen.
Wow, I would have never guessed that. Wow.
Mhm. Yeah, most people have. My wife would even tell you, like, she's like, "Oh my gosh, you're so different, like from the introverted extroverted scale from early on, but it's because I've made that switch spiritually to say, okay, God, if this is the purpose, this is who I have to be, not for myself or my own glory, but to help
Yeah.
get the message out."
Well, I think Steve Prefontaine. He had a lot of great quotes. He was
Hmm.
celebrating. I think what is the 50th year of his death or
Yep.
whatever.
Yep.
um, said to do anything less than your best is to sacrifice the gift.
Hmm.
And I know obviously he probably did not mean that in a spiritual way, but
Right.
it just makes a lot of sense because we honor God in excellence and we honor
Hmm.
God by saying, Lord, you've given me this and this and this. You've given me the strength in my legs, air in my lungs. And so we turn that back around and then we give God the glory because, I'm asked the same thing that, people like, Melissa, why do you keep running these hundreds?
Hmm.
Because it's a running joke. Seriously, a running joke. Get
Yeah.
it? So my husband, he usually paces me, and at mile 70, he can tell you like clockwork. I'm like, that's it. What time is it? Okay, it's 1 a.m. I'm not doing this again. Look at me. I'm being for real this time. I tell him, look at me. I said, and then he'll start laughing. I said, Larry, don't laugh. This time I'm for real.
Yeah.
And of course, I always come back and I do another one
Yep.
because just the pain goes away. But then you have this buckle, and people will say, hey, Melissa, I thought you said you weren't going to do that again. I said, yeah, but the Lord called me to do it. And you know
Hmm.
what? And I give him all the glory. I want to share a story with you real quick on my very last one. You're going to love
Yeah.
this. And this is how good God is and how if we will just suffer well, the
Hmm.
Bible tells us that we're supposed to have great endurance. Well,
Yep.
great endurance means we have to have long suffering.
Hmm.
So suffering means that we suffer well. We suffer well and we smile knowing that there's a purpose in our suffering. We were at mile like 65 of the Blue Heron in Alabama a couple months ago, and this storm came in out of nowhere. It was the middle of the night. It may have been close to the mile 7. It all just kind of blurred
Yeah.
together. But it was a storm came in the middle of the night, and we're right there by the river. And to tell you the temperature dropped would be an understatement. I just immediately got cold. We got to the turnaround at the aid station, and to get back to the other aid station would have been another 5 miles. And
Yeah.
it started downpour, and they had left the aid station. So
Oh.
I had no coat. I had nothing. I had my hydration vest,
Hmm.
but I looked around and I said, you know what, Larry, I'm going to get hypothermia here. This is the way it's going to go down. I was joking, but I was still like, Lord, this can't be the way this ends. Lord,
Yeah.
you called this race. This cannot be the way this ends. This can't please. So I'm looking around. I'm like, Lord, there's got to be something. I'm looking and I'm looking, and I see this beautiful trash bag, and I'm like, oh, I love it. Oh, it's so beautiful. And
Yep.
but it was filled with trash from like 13 hours already. And I
Oh
told
yeah.
Mary, I said, I'm throwing up a flare prayer. Lord, please don't let this trash bag stink. And we're in the middle of a nature reserve, and I'm like, we can't throw this trash out. Look around, we find a box. We pour everything from the trash bag into the box. Larry has a knife, cuts an opening in the top,
Hmm.
puts it over me. I'm 5'3". It goes all the way down to my ankles. By God's grace, it was a construction bag, so it was really,
Yeah.
really. And he cut me out these little armholes, and I finished. I ran another 15 miles in this trash bag. And oh my gosh. And I was just thanking the Lord, Lord, thanks for the trash bag. Oh
Yeah.
man, great. And after I got warmed up, I almost didn't want to part with it because I rolled it up real carefully and I was like, ah, and I just in the thing. And I thank the Lord. I just
Yeah.
think about, for the person out there thinking, Melissa, if we give up too easy
Mhm.
and we throw in the towel when God is giving us a story. I have shared that story several times since then and
Yeah.
about how to look for the blessings and what God will give you. And that if
Right.
you judge, because the thing was, if at that point in 15 hours, it was going to be cut off.
Yeah.
So either I made it to the finish line and I kept going in 15 hours, or I bailed out and I
Mhm.
woke up and I heard the cheers of everybody else because that happened to me on my first 100. I
Yeah.
DNF and I was at the hotel and the finish line was about a quarter mile away and I was packing up my car and I heard them cheering.
Yeah.
And I you know what I said to myself? Unless you're dying, that will never happen again because
Right.
you bailed out when you shouldn't have.
Yeah.
You had pain. You bailed out because of that. There, and I felt like I had missed an opportunity to give God the glory.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but anyway, regret makes a very hard pillow. So,
Yep.
it's just remember for that person out there saying it's too hard, you know what? You're going to wake up tomorrow another day older, whether you do it or not.
Right.
And every
Well,
day is easier.
and to your point on, one of the things this happened this past Saturday, I ran in a track meet and the leading up to it, like I had signed up for it actually before one of my athletes qualified for the national track meet in Eugene, Oregon. And then they were like, "Can you come coach him at the meet?" And I was like, "Okay, well, okay." So I drive to Houston from Waco, which is about 2.5, 3 hours on Tuesday night, fly out Wednesday morning, get to Eugene Wednesday evening. He races Thursday evening. I fly out Friday morning back to Houston by Friday afternoon, wake up and I run in a track meet on Saturday. My body was toast.
Oh, I bet.
Like just there was no spring in my legs, no anything. And this was 1,500 meters, so just less than a mile. And I'd signed up for the 800 as well. And and it was the only time this year that I was going to be able to run those two races. And so my ego is like, I need to get a national and world ranking time for this for my age group. Like that's my whole purpose of going to this meet is getting these times because I knew in my age group there wasn't a lot of competition. Um, and so it was like I need guys that are younger than me to pull me through, get some really good times, and then just be able to say, hey, I'm ranked wherever. But I'm doing the warm up and I'm like, oh, I feel like I feel like toast. Get to the starting line. Of course, I knew a couple of the other guys in the race. And so they're like, oh man, we're excited you're here. I can't wait to see how fast you run. Da, da, da. And I'm like, and I keep telling, oh my God, I just flew to
The bar
Eugene. I'm
high.
just like, I am like, when they line us up on the start line and they say, okay, now take 2 steps back. I'm gonna call you to the line, shoot the gun. So we take 2 steps back, and I literally looked over to Brian, who stayed right next to me, and I was like, I don't want to do this. And he looked at me, and I was like, I'm like, mm-mm. And like, so even as prepared as we are, is excellent in expert whatever we are and whatever. Like, there's always that fear, that doubt, that
Mhm.
we're gonna come up to it and be like, I don't want to do this. And I did, and I didn't run. I mean, I ran a solid time, but not obviously not what I knew I could, had I been fresh, not done all that traveling. Um, and so I finished the first race, the 1,500, and about an hour later was the 800. And so I went, sat down, and I was like, I'm done. There's no way I'm running this. And multiple people came over like, hey, I can't wait to see you run the 800. And I'm like, oh, I really don't want to, you know, I don't want to do this. Get up, and I could barely jog. I was like just toast. But I also had an athlete in Oregon that same day, a girl who was running the 800 for her race. And timing wise, she was going to be about 30 minutes after my race. And so she texted me, I'm going to the warm up area. Good luck in your race. And I was like, oh no, now I have to run this. So I go out and I run. And again, it's not the time I wanted or anything. But I ran 2:21 and sat down got the streaming, started watching her race. Right. I'm still sweating, but I'm watching her race. And she didn't run the race that she wanted. She got a little nervous. She got a little overexcited. But she went 220. And so I texted her and said, congratulations. Her PR is 216. So it was pretty close, but said, congratulations. You did great. I could tell everything was like not perfect, but da, da, da. And she wrote back and she was like, oh, thank you. It's like, yeah, it definitely wasn't great, but at least I beat you. And I was like, okay. I was like, you know, like it wasn't my best time. It wasn't all that, but that she was able to go, okay, I didn't run great, but I still had something good and positive come out of it.
Yeah.
Right. And I think sometimes that's the bigger picture of like life is not always going to go the way we want to. We
No.
can do our best to make it perfect. We can eat perfect. We can exercise. We can do all these things. We can have the best looking physical body, not knowing what's going on inside,
Right.
you know, but being able to say, okay, I didn't do my best, but I'm still happy with what I've got. Like I think that because there's going to be trials, there's going to be suffering, there's going to be all these things that happen. And being able to say, but I gave my best and I got something positive out of it.
Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, it goes back to the parable of the talents. We're going to be asked, what did you do with what I gave you?
Hmm.
And I think that and everyone's going to have to answer that for
Yeah.
themselves. And we only got this one life though, and
Yeah.
we only get one shot at it.
Yep.
And so the better we treat our bodies, obviously, the better we can do, and the more we can inspire those around us. Because
Right.
whether people know it or not, somebody's always watching you.
Oh yeah.
Our kids, our coworkers.
Hmm.
I remember one time I had a slew of hamstring injuries right after my first 100, and I was in the pool 8 weeks here, then 8 weeks again, and 8 weeks again because hamstring injuries
Oh
are
yeah.
oh my gosh. And it almost just, I was just like, the more that I went through it, I was like, you know what, Lord, I'm just gonna trust you in this. And I went into work one day and I remember I was getting my coffee and I was close to being done with the last of the rehabbing. And
Yeah.
one of the nurses that we work with, she came up and she goes, Melissa, I've been watching you. She says, I've been waiting for you to crack. She goes, but you just got more joyful. And she was like, I just don't understand it. And I was like, well, it's just the Lord.
Yeah.
I just am, and I know I'm going to come out better. I'm
Yeah.
going to come out better on the other side. And I did by God's grace. I came out
Mhm.
with a new appreciation. And I also came out with, I do those daily blogs now with
Yeah.
whatever the Lord reveals to me in Bible study. And this all started because I said, Lord, I know you don't make deals. I completely understand that. But I said, but if you will allow me to run again, I will do whatever you call me to do.
Yeah.
I'm tired of messing around. I'm ready to be sold out. And he allowed me to run. And then I remember about a week afterwards, I was just loving life. The birds were singing, and I'm like, Lord, I get to run. It's a beautiful day. And then I felt the Holy Spirit say, Melissa, remember what I revealed to you in Bible study? And I'm like, yeah, that was great. Make a video, tell somebody. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I can't do that.
Hmm.
And oh my goodness, I was like, but what do? God made
Yeah.
good on and so I did. And the first couple of times I was like, Lord, I'm so nervous. I can't do this. But, the Lord has just kind of used those to help other people. And,
Oh yeah.
God will bring good out of everything if we just
Hmm.
trust him.
Yep. Very true. So how can people connect with the blog and follow you?
Oh, great. So it's pretty easy. I'm on Instagram at the Joy-Filled Runner. I'm on
Right.
Facebook as the Joy-Filled Runner. I'm on YouTube as the Joy-Filled Runner.
Right.
And then the joyfilledrunner.blogspot.com is where I do
Awesome.
my blog. So
Awesome. Well, I'll put connections to all that in the show notes so people can connect with you and follow along and learn and get inspiration and I love the stuff that you're putting out. And and it's so true that like that and it's almost like oversaid, but athletics, but running is such, you know, it parallels life so much.
close, yes.
It's so much parallels like what we go through, whether it's, a training run or a race, you know, or the 6 months of training plan and the ups and downs of that. Like it parallels what we go through in life so much in being able to share that, whether somebody's a runner or not, but just being able to share the ins and outs of what's going on through those moments is huge. And I thank you for doing that.
Well, I would love to leave this with our listeners out there. In
Yeah.
2 Timothy 4:7,
Mhm.
Paul was always talking about how our life was just it was one long race, and if we do it well,
Mhm.
we can be like Paul, and at the end of their days, we can say, "I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith." And I think that as athletes, and I think that's what we strive to do.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. So thank you so much, Melissa, for being a guest. It's been great.
It's an honor. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thanks for checking out the Confidence Through Health podcast. Please subscribe, post a review, share this episode with those you love who need a little extra help with their health journey. Visit allinhealthandwellness.com to learn more about the coaching programs that I provide. All episodes are produced by the Social Media Cowboys, your source for all online marketing needs. Go to socialmediacowboys.com for more information.